This is James here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting January the 28th, 2019. This week I wanted to work with Kipper because it's been a while, and so the deck I wanted to work with is the Roaring Twenties Kipper by Lynn Boyle, and like I do every week, I'm going to be leaving information in the description box below in case you want to learn more about the deck and in case you also want to acquire it for your collection. So I hadn't worked with this deck in some time, so I decided that I would ask the deck how it felt about being used for this week's Oracle Outlook. So I did a line of 5 reading and I found it to be very insightful. So I wanted to share that with you, specifically with those who usually ask me about how I personally work with a particular deck, or in this case, a particular system. So in the next segment, I'll be sharing that line of 5 reading that I did. If it turns out that it's not your thing and you want to get to the reading, I will be leaving a timestamp in the description box below so you can bypass that reading and get right to this week's Oracle Outlook reading. So again, we are working with the Roaring Twenties Kipper by Lynn Boyle. And now that I've set things up, let's now move to the table and take a closer look at either A, the reading that I did with the deck about being used for this week's reading, or jumping right to the reading. And here we are with the line of 5 reading that I did, asking the cards what I needed to know about working with this particular deck for this week's Oracle Outlook. So what I do when I work with Kipper, I tend to work with Kipper from left to right, because for me, Kipper is like a story, and so this would be a storyline, and that each card talks about how the story is unfolding. So I started with the card on the far left, and the card here is the man, and so the man represents me because this is my card, much like gentleman in Lenormand being a male significator. This would be the same thing here. The interesting thing to note is that the man is looking to the left of the line, and there's no cards here, right? Which means that his back is to the rest of the line. But I thought it was significant because this was the first card starting out. So now moving to the next card. Here we have partnership, which is also known as marriage or state of marriage. So for me, partnership is a card that can talk about a serious, committed relationship. So it's talking about my relationship with this particular deck, because this was the deck I wanted to use for this week's reading. So it's talking about my relationship with the deck and my commitment to the deck. Now the interesting thing to note is that when a person card, much like the man is here, has its back to another card, it can sometimes talk about a possible struggle with whatever this card is talking about. So the interesting thing here is that the deck is talking about the possible struggle for me in terms of my commitment to it, because I don't use it a lot, even though I love working with the deck, personally speaking, right? So that is the interesting thing to note about partnership. One other note about partnership, partnership is known as a connector card. So what it does, it connects the cards on either side. So there is a connection between my card and then the next card. So let's take a look at the next card now. So here we have in the middle of the line is sad news. So now this would be the heart of the matter, the central issue, or the focus, right? So sad news usually represents news or messages, because in the image there is a woman who has a letter in her hand. So it represents news or messages, but it's usually news or messages that are either upsetting or disappointing. So this card can represent upset and disappointment, right? So now remember what I said about partnership being a connector card. So there's a connection being made between myself and upset and disappointment. If I go with partnership being the middle card, the bridge between the two, and I go with this being the relationship I'm having with the deck, then I looked at this and thought that the deck is upset and disappointed with me because I haven't been using it a lot, right? So we have that. And then the other thing about sad news, just like partnership is a connector card, sad news is what we call a cause and effect card. So with the woman facing this way, this is what's being affected by the upset and disappointment. So the upset and disappointment is affecting the relationship with the deck and my connection to it, right? So that's how I would look at sad news. So now moving to the card behind sad news, because just like this is the effect, what's behind the woman on sad news is the cause. So this would be the source of the upset and the disappointment. So now here we have a long way. So a long way is another card that connects two cards because of the path on the card. So there is definitely a connection because the path leads to or connects to sad news, right? But a long way could represent something that is a long way off or a long way to go. I tend to look at it as a path and a journey, right? Now this is known as a time and distance card. So for me, it could be saying too, again, with the idea of maybe not having used the deck in some time, that distance has been created. Again, now remember, this is the cause of the upset, going with sad news. So it could be saying too, like, because of time and distance, and that would be distance in the metaphorical sense, because in terms of physical distance, the deck and I are in the same house. We're in the same space, so it's not physical distance. It would just be a matter of being distant, meaning like the time span that the deck is being used. It's been a while, right? So that would be a long way. And then the last card here is short rest, which is also known as short illness. So short illness is a card for me that can represent a timeout, a break, or a rest, right? So again, keeping with the idea that the upset and disappointment here with sad news is being caused by these two cards, because now a long way is connected to short rest as well, then it would be the time out has been for a while, there's been some time attached to the timeout, the break, the rest. It can also represent like a down patch, right? So the deck is acknowledging it's upset with me because of how infrequently I use it. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then I was left with the idea like that didn't really answer my question. It told me how the deck felt about my use of it or use with it, but it didn't answer my question about working with it for this week's reading. And again, because there are no cards in front of the man. So what I did was I decided to pull a card to see what would be in the future if I worked with this deck. What would I be facing using this deck? So now what I'll do is I'll change the camera angle and widen it so we can see the cards that I pulled in response to that aspect of my question. So I've adjusted the line to show you what I did after I looked at the initial line of 5. So again, because there was no card in front of the man, because he's looking to this side, so there's nothing here about the future, and my question was future oriented because I wanted to know what did I need to know about using this deck for this week's Oracle Outlook. So I decided to pull another card and place it in front of the man. And the card that I pulled was Gloom and Doubt. Okay, so now Gloom and Doubt is a card that talks about confusion and uncertainty, right? So this intrigued me, but it also is much like Sad News. This is a card that's a cause and effect card. So what I do is I consider the direction of the man on the card, and he's leaning this way. So for me, the leaning this way talks about what's being affected, right? So it would say too, there is confusion and doubt or uncertainty that I'm going to be affected by, right? But it doesn't tell me what the cause is. So as a result of that, I decided to pull another card to give me something about the cause. What did I need to know, right, about that? So I drew another card and I placed it next to Gloom and Doubt. So we have the relationship between cause and effect. So now the source of the uncertainty here is thoughts. So now thoughts is what's called a stop card. So it stops the line, right? So I wouldn't need to pull another card after this card. So Thoughts usually represents, in this particular case, what's on someone's mind, their thoughts, mental activity. It can also represent planning, right? So I had made the plans to use the deck, but now as a result of looking at this reading, I now was being faced with confusion, uncertainty, and doubt about it, right? But it would also be saying too, like, if I go with the answer to my question, that I would be facing confusion, doubt, or uncertainty about my plans. So that was the reading that I did, and it did not deter me from using this deck. I thought, despite the fact that thoughts and gloom and doubt was facing the man, I decided I wanted to go ahead and work with it anyway. But I wanted to take some time out this week to present this reading because I know some viewers like to see how I personally work with the cards or work with a particular system. So I thought I would include this reading in this week's video. So now that we've wrapped that up, let's now move on to the line of 5 that's going to make up this week's reading. And here we are with the cards on the table. I'm going to go ahead and take the deck in hand. I'm going to take a few moments to shuffle the cards. And as I do, I'm focusing on my usual intention for these weekly general readings. And that is, I'm asking the cards to give us the information, the insight, the guidance that will be helpful and beneficial to us moving through the upcoming week. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. And fan the cards out. And now I'm looking for 5 cards in the fan that are getting my attention. 1, 2, 3, 2 more, 4, and 5. So I have the 5 cards selected. Now I'm going to take the remainder of the deck up. And now I'll take cards and line them up. All right. So now the cards have been selected. I'm going to start with the card on the far left. And remember, we're reading this as a storyline, so this is how the story starts or unfolds. And the first card we have here is Yearning and Abroad. If you work with Kipper, this is known as Hope Big Water. So this is a card about our hopes, our wishes, and our dreams this week. So for some of us, we're being asked to put time, effort, and attention to what it is that we are hoping for, wishing for, the things that we dream about. So there is that. Another thing with Yearning and Abroad, going with the abroad part, this could represent travel. This card can usually represent travel long distances. This could represent something having to do with something overseas or something of foreign nature or something about going abroad. So there is that for some people. Or there could be, if we go with yearning, there could be a hope, wish, or a dream that may pertain to traveling abroad or going abroad. So there is that if we combine the 2 elements together. Another thing about this card for me is that for some people, if you are spiritually minded, this card could also represent one's spirituality and doing something with regards to that. So those are my associations for Yearning and Abroad. Again, hopes, dreams, wishes, something about goals and maybe attaining a goal, something having to do with something foreign, something overseas, something about traveling abroad or traveling a great distance, and then something having to do with our spirituality. So now let's see how the next card informs us more about this card. And here we have the Woman card. Okay, so very interesting. So in my previous segment, I had the man, and so now we have the woman. So now the woman would just represent a woman. So if you're a woman and you're watching this video, the woman card would represent you. If you're a man and you're watching this video, then the woman card would represent a woman who is significant, or important to you. Now, just like I talked about in the previous example, the woman has yearning and abroad behind her. So for some women watching this video, there may be something having to do with a hope, a wish, or a dream, or a goal that you're wanting to see fulfilled or achieved that you may be having a bit of a struggle with this week. So it could just be a matter of what could you do to attain the goals that you have for the upcoming week, because they may require some effort on your part, again, because of placement, right? This could also be, if we're using the abroad aspect of the card to describe the woman, this could be a woman who is foreign or overseas. So, and it could also be, if we go with the idea about spirituality, then this would be maybe a spiritual or a religious woman, right? But now the very interesting thing here is that the woman is facing all the other cards. So this would be aspects that she may be looking forward to, or that may be coming up for her as the week unfolds. So now let's take a look at the middle card. So here we have in the middle, we have, oh, wow, how interesting is that? So here we have sad news again in the middle of the line. So just like I did in the previous example, sad news for me is at the heart of the line. So this is about the heart of the matter. This is about something we're being asked to focus on, or the central issue. So just like I said in the previous example, sad news can represent news or messages that are upsetting or disappointing. But it could also represent a situation that is upsetting or disappointing, right? And so the woman facing this card could represent the woman is going to be affected. Remember, this is a cause and effect card. So with the woman on sad news looking at the woman over here, the news or the upset or the disappointment is going to affect a woman, right? And then that may be why she's struggling with a hope or a wish or a dream. There may be some sort of disappointment or sadness or upset in regards to that, right? So again, a woman is being affected by some sort of news that she may receive that's going to be upsetting or disappointing, right? So now let's look at the next card, because the next card again is going to tell us the cause. And here we have older man. So we have an interesting thing here. We have a relationship between a woman and older man. So older man would represent someone who's older than the woman. So this could be a father, this could be an older brother, this could be an uncle, cousin, somebody who's a male. So this could be a male relative who would be older than the woman, right? Now, if it's not a familial relationship, then this could be somebody who is an older male, but it could be somebody who is in a position of authority. So this could be somebody she works with, or, you know, in some other kind of relationship, right? But the thing that connects them is the news. So there's going to be an older man who's going to be the source of news or messages that is to some degree upsetting or disappointing, right? So there's something about news being presented by an older man that's going to have some sort of emotional response or reaction from the woman, right? So I'm seeing that. I don't know, I'm seeing this and I'm going by the image. So I'm looking at the fact that the man on the older man card is holding newspaper. So there may be something having to do with some sort of current event. So if it's not an actual current event like something newsworthy, then it could just be a current event, meaning there's an event that's going on in the situation or the relationship between the two people that is current, right? It's not a past issue. It's something that's going on right now in the moment, right? So that's how I'm seeing that with the symbology of the newspaper. But again, older man usually represents an older man, and it would be somebody who's older than the woman. So now it's very interesting. Now he's also looking towards sad news, right? So they each are looking at news. So there's something about the connection about the news itself, or the message or communication between the two people. And it could just be saying too, like if there's a relationship, if I take the news out of it, if there's a relationship between the two people, there's some sort of upset or some sort of disappointment between the two people. And there may need to be some sort of communication about that. And then if I throw in yearning and abroad, there may be a hope, a wish, or a dream, or a goal that the woman has concerning the upset and the disappointment between the relationship between herself and this older man. Right, so that's how I would look at that. So now let's look at the last card, rounding out the line. Okay, so here we have get together. So get together is a card that can talk about getting together, meetings, something having to do with something public. So it could be that there's going to be some upset or disappointment, the heart of the line, pertaining to a man and getting together with him, or some sort of meeting, doing something socially, something of that nature. Get together is a card that is a connector card, much like partnership in my previous example. It's a connector card, so it usually connects the card on either side of it. So it's saying that there's a connection between something public, in terms of a get-together, with an older man. But there's going to be some sadness, some upset, some disappointment regarding that. And it's going to be on his end because older man is not facing this card. So it could be something that he struggles with. So it could just be a matter of there may be something on his end that he has to maybe not be able to keep that kind of commitment, but it's going to have an effect on the woman. So if this resonates with you, or if you discover that you may be having your social plans changed and affected by someone else, you're being given a heads up, like how are you going to be able to manage that? If there's a possibility of upset or sadness or disappointment, how are you going to be able to manage that this week? So that is how I would read the line. And on that note, I'll go ahead and end this week's Oracle Outlook. I'm James Himm Mitchell, and I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading. And I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day. And I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week. Take care.